I'm Peter Rowan. I'm the Executive Director of the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Center at Seattle U. And thanks for coming to workshop 2. We're going to talk about value propositions today, but I also want to review a few things that we talked about last workshop, just to put some headlines and some deadlines on your radar. So the big news this year is, thanks to the kind donation from Madeline Hayden and her husband Jeff, from the founders of Nut Pods, we've increased the first and second place prize. In fact, we've doubled them from 10,000 to 20 and 5 to 10 respectively. So that's some very competitive prize money that should be plenty to get your businesses off the ground. So something to work for. And then that puts us up close to 40,000 or so in cash prizes total, plus another 10 or 20 in-kind prizes, including like Amazon AWS credits and so forth. So there's a lot to offer, aside from the most important piece, which is the experience of getting feedback and working with coaches and mentors through the process. So again, a reminder, there's 3 rounds. The first round, which is coming up probably faster than most of us like, the deadline for the screening round entry is March 21st. And so in that, you submit a 2 to 3 page business plan summary. There's a very good judging rubric, and some examples on our website. So I would definitely look at those, and I would try to work hard to make sure that your entries take into account the judging criteria, because many of the screening round judges, there'll be more than 100 of them, will look at multiple plans, and they'll be looking for those characteristics, and you don't want to make them do too much detective work. So then the semifinals are scheduled for May 12th, and in that, there's 2 pieces of it. So there's a 2-minute elevator pitch in front of an audience and a group of judges. And a few weeks before, we're actually going to have a pitch clinic to sort of make sure that you have a lot of practice in delivering the elevator pitch. And then the second portion is a trade show round, where we'll have 75 or so trade show judges who will mingle with you at your trade show booth with your team, and ultimately judge what they think of your executive summary and of how well you did in the due diligence they conducted with you. So those 2 combined scores will determine who goes to the finals and those prize awards I just showed you. So that will take 4 teams to the finals to compete, plus 2 of the top award winners will have a chance to exhibit at the finals as well. So there'll be 6 teams that get quite a bit of exposure at our final event, which usually has 250 or so people from the community. The judges are entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, early stage investors. We have many examples, some of which I'll show you later, actually, of competitors who got their first rounds of capital from folks they met during the competition. So that's something to look forward to. So the timeline, which I've sort of a repeat from the last slide, but now you're getting ready. So getting ready, I think, means think hard about some of the topics we cover in the workshops and how to present to the judging criteria in the first round. Being ready also makes sure you have a complete team, and I'm going to give you some ideas for how to do that in a second. And then so focus on having a good solid entry for the March 21st deadline. We'll take between 12 and 16 teams to the semifinals, and I can't tell you how many entrants it would be. We shoot for 30 or so. So the odds are pretty good if you if you work hard on putting a good entry in out of the gate. And so there's an increasing workload, I would say, as you advance to follow-on rounds. You don't actually have to complete a fully fleshed out business plan unless you make the finals. So your finalist entry will be judged half on your written plan and half on your oral presentation on June 2nd. So hopefully you'll pay attention to these dates and be ready. And we'll match you with a coach during the semifinal round. And if you make the finals, you'll get an extensive round of expert coaching sessions in addition to the coach who will stay with you through the whole program. Okay, so one of the things about being ready is not doing this alone. It's a decent amount of work, and also it's hard to credibly present a big idea if you're the only person on the team. So I would encourage you to work hard to build a team if you can. And one of the ways to do that is to join us at our first Friday mixer, which we're going to do the first Friday of every month going forward. This time around, this Friday, the 3rd at 4 to 6, we're going to do it in the Billadoo Makerspace. If you haven't been in the Senegal Center, you need to go check this out. We'll also get a tour of the Makerspace and get an explanation of the resources that are there to support students and innovators across the campus. So it's a great place to meet folks, like-minded folks who might want to join your team. So if you're a business student and you're looking for some technical resources, go over there and meet some computer science folks or some engineers. If you're a STEM-minded person and you're looking for somebody that can be a spreadsheet jockey on the business side, go to an event like this and maybe you'll meet somebody there. So that's next Friday, and then we'll do it the first Friday of every month going forward. I think that's a great opportunity to build a team. Okay, for time, I'm going to skip this. Well, there's a small group here. I'm going to jump right into talking about what it takes to win these competitions. So I said in the first workshop that the most important thing you need to win this competition is traction in the business. So traction can come in many forms. If you are up and running and have customers and have some revenue, you have a social proof that people actually want what you're selling. That's an amazing traction. But some of you are at an earlier stage, so don't be discouraged. You can show traction in other forms. It could be in the form of market research that you've done that demonstrate a real problem that needs to be solved. It could be in the form of customer discovery, which I love, where you've gone out and actually interviewed customers about the problem and designed a solution for them. It could be in the form of having a very solid, experienced cross-functional team. Many people, many stakeholders bet on teams more than they bet on ideas, in fact. So all of these are traction points or evidence of traction. And you need to think about building those and pulling those resources together and make sure you can convey that you have these resources to help you be successful in this, inevitable struggle that you're getting into with entrepreneurship. So at the core, we think a good opportunity is one where you have a solution that fits a problem that actually exists in the world. So we call that a value proposition. What you have in front of you is called the value proposition canvas. And I'm going to talk about it a little bit more, but I'm going to let this person talk to you about it for a few minutes. Presumably this won't cause any other technical problems. We'll see. Yeah, I'm not even getting that to work. Okay, well, I just have to deal with me talking about it then. So what is a value proposition? Well, so it's the merger of a need or an unmet need with a solution. So one way, shorthand way of thinking about it is when you state your value proposition, you should be able to have an X, Y, and a Z. So we do X for Y by doing Z. So X is the benefit you provide, Y is the problem holder or the target customer who you're solving their problem, and Z is how you solve that problem. Now, I'm going to go into a lot more detail about that, but the value proposition can also be expanded into a 1 or 2 minute elevator pitch. Now, it's called an elevator pitch because you're riding in the elevator and somebody asks you to tell them what you do, and you only have 30 to 60 seconds tops to say it. So you have to try to get it all in there in a very short and concise way. So you build that elevator pitch really off of the value proposition, and you don't want to overlook any of these elements in building the value proposition. So if somebody asks you to tell them about your business and you start with, well, it's rather complicated, that's a poor start. It should not be complicated. So you have to be able to translate it for a group of folks who may not have the level of industry expertise or technical expertise that you bring to the table when you're doing the business. That's imperative. Some people will try to shortcut this with the thought that, well, everyone that I would be selling to is going to be as technically competent as I am, and therefore I can explain something in a very complicated manner, and that's okay, they will understand. That's a mistake, because the folks that you need on your side are not necessarily going to be from the same area of subject matter expertise that you are. They're going to be investors, they're going to be advisors, they're going to be people who can open doors, and they won't necessarily have the knowledge that you have. So don't assume that everybody wants to go to school the way you've gone to school and get this incredible experience. So translate it into something short. So it ends up being the basis for your whole pitch. You'll continually go back to this core value proposition. It'll also be the foundation for all of the activities that the business presumably engages in. So the only reason that you would have a key activity in the business would be if it tied back to something core to the value proposition. So let's look at this this lower part of the slide. So you always start with a target customer. So if you came up with an idea and you said, here's a problem that I think needs to be solved, the first thing to do is to go out and find out whether people really have that problem. And if they do, then they could become your target customer. So in the lower example, I'm using the business plan competition as an example of a product. That's a little bit of a stretch, but so for Seattle U students and alumni, the business plan competition is a way to launch a business and launch your career by getting connections and coaching and cash. And unlike other resources, this is free for you. So you see what I've done is I've created, kind of on the fly actually, because I didn't practice very much, this value proposition for the business plan competition. And I included the target customer, I included the product or service, I included what we do or offer as a benefit. There's several benefits here. There's connections, coaching, and prizes, and what differentiates us from other things like this, which was the fact that it's free. So that's kind of a way that you would approach building your own value proposition. So let's piece these out a little bit. So an enterprise without a paying customer is a hobby. So even if it's a nonprofit or a social impact business or a not-for-profit or a B Corp, whatever you want to be, it still needs to have some sort of economic engine. And that economic engine is the thing that that allows for a transaction between a customer and the enterprise. So even in the case of a nonprofit, we have plenty of examples of nonprofits who compete well in this competition. There still needs to be a target customer. So one simple way to think about a customer is, who has a need that's salient enough, that's strong enough that they're willing to open their wallet and pay for my service, even if my service is kind of barbed wire and broken glass. So that's what we might call a minimum viable product, which would be, it does the thing, it provides the value, provides the benefit, but it doesn't necessarily have the full bells and whistles because it's unnecessary at this stage. So the way we like to do this, there's a lot of ways to get inside the head of the customer, but we like to use empathy. So put yourself in their shoes and study their problem and design your solution for their problem. So a good way to demonstrate that you're onto something would be to talk to 100 or so people about a problem they have in the area that you're trying to solve without necessarily trying to sell them anything. As soon as you introduce your product or service, you're selling them something, and you're gonna get a lot of biases back. So here's a tool that you might use to walk through this, what we call empathy interviews. So empathy interviews are simply putting yourself firmly in the shoes of the customers and listening to let them describe the problem and let them describe the way they solve that problem now. and perhaps they'll describe the need for a solution like yours. So this is a kind of pattern recognition that we're doing here. So we should be taking careful notes when we go through customer discovery and talk to these different potential customer segments. So we can try to find something in common. Here's a sort of a silly example, but the market for a square hat, having done interviews of people 20 to 30, 30 to 50, and 50 to 70, the thing in common is that everyone with a square head seems to have a need for a square hat. So it's kind of they all share the same problem. They all speak the same language. They all tend to have the same habits and go to the same places, and they talk to each other. That's a beautiful beachhead market for you to go after, is a relatively small group of people that are quite zealous about having this problem solved. So we can use the value proposition canvas as a way of defining this. So on the one side, we have the pains and gains that certain types of people have. So if I have a solution for a particular type of job, so it doesn't necessarily have to be, a job like a programmer or, a ditch digger. It just has to do the thing that customer does on a daily basis. But let's say it is a programmer, a developer. So if I envision that that's too complicated what they do, and I can simplify their life, let them do their job faster, then I can create a gain for them. The pain being the opposite of the gain, that things take too long. So if I have a tool that allows them to develop programs faster, then that's a real gain. On the left is the gain creators, the pain relievers, and ultimately the products and services I'm providing. So the reason that we're mapping out these things is so that we can find fit. What we're looking for is a fit between our solution and the customer problem. And it might seem really obvious, but it's subtle in that most people don't do it this way. Most people envision a solution and then look for the people who have the problem. What we're doing here is, we have an idea, a germ of an idea, but without developing it further, we're going to go out and find people with that problem and see if we can refine our understanding of the solution we need to provide. That's going to help us find a fit between problem and solution. So a lot of mistakes can be made along the way, and mistakes are okay because we're learning. This is a learning organization. In fact, I'm very passionate about Steve Blank's definition of a startup. It's not a small business. It's not a small version of a big company. It's not even a company. It's not even a business. It's an organization that's engaged in a search. And you're searching for a repeatable and scalable business by going out into the world and finding folks who have the problem. So you can read faster than I can talk, but you can see these are some of the classic mistakes, is trying to solve. The one that I regret the most in my own experience is trying to solve everyone's problem. And so imagining a fully featured, fully functional, fully featured solution that meets everyone's need. And everyone is almost never a customer. Unless you're selling oxygen, everyone is just not a customer, and you shouldn't bother trying to build a plan to target everyone. What you should do, and you will definitely get asked about who your customers are, and you should not say everyone. You should have a very specific customer archetype that represents, maybe think about it as the middle of the bullseye, where those are your best customers and they live there. And there's more potential customers outside of that bullseye, but everyone in that bullseye has a square head and wants your square hat. So when you're going through the business plan competition, most of the folks that are doing the judges are going to think like investors. And investors are usually thinking about these questions when you're presenting to them. They're thinking, why is this even important? Why am I even here listening to this? So they're looking for a reason that what you're presenting is important, is relevant. So think about offering a lot of information and a lot of precision about the nature of the problem. So I'll just make up an example. If I have a solution for curing malaria, I might attract more attention in my presentation if I clarify that 4.5 million people die every year of waterborne illness. So I've brought the problem to the present in a very detailed way. And so that's the so what, or the who cares. So the who cares relates to the target customer. So show me that there's people that care about the problem you're solving. We're not all going to be customers. So you're very likely to present a solution to judges who are not going to buy your product or service ever. It's not for them. It's for some other constituency. So make sure that the judges understand who your target customer group is and why it's a so what for them. And then finally, how do you know? So you know this because you've gone out and gotten data. And there's two kinds of data you can get. There's what I call top-down data. You can go out and get market research that says the market for mobile phones in 2025 is going to be X billions of dollars. That's good if you're trying to sell into the mobile phone market, but it doesn't really tell you anything about the quality of your opportunity. So you would do customer discovery, which is bottom-up research, bottom-up answering the question, how do you know? So you've also gone out and talked to people with this problem, and they've told you that they would buy this solution if it existed. That's very, very compelling. Okay, so I'm getting to the end of this part, and we'll go to questions in a second, but I want to just encourage you, inspire you with a few success stories that I pulled out this morning, which we're very excited about. So I already mentioned Madeline. Madeline gifted you doubling of the prize money for first and second place prize. She was the second place winner in 2015 with NutPods, which is now one of the fastest growing consumer packaged goods companies in the US. We're very excited about her success. So Caleb Carr was the 2018 grand prize winner with Vita Inclinata, which is drone stabilization technology. And that company has gone on to sell their solution across the globe and is really on a tear. Ann Jarris founded Discovery Health while she was here and won the Jones Progress Awards in 2018 and went on to be a high growth travel testing solution. And then Elias Baker was named to the 2021 30 Under 30 as one of the co-founders of NanoDropper. So you can see that there's a fairly, I have one more. Oh, and then Ryan Schmidt and his colleagues in the executive MBA program in 2007, going back pretty far now, won the business plan competition with this idea, Vera Whole Health. And then after many pivots and many struggles, sold the majority of the company to a private equity firm, CD&R, for $400 million. And Ryan and his team from Albers continue to run it. And they recently acquired a public company, Castlight, for a lot of money. So I'm showing you these to inspire you that there is a line connecting your participation in programs like the business plan competition and success. Now, for sure, that line is not a straight line because this is a struggle. So some of a lot of the coaching and mentoring that we provide is designed to help you figure out how to handle that struggle. Okay, I'll stop talking now and we can go to questions.
I'm curious, Peter, that there are people that won't be joining necessarily the business plan competition.